And I'm going to share my screen. And we will play that. So thank you everyone for coming today. I know it can be tricky to make time in the evening, so I appreciate your participation. We're going to be covering literature reviews today. And now literature reviews, and many of you, some of you might be working on them, some of you might be getting ready to work on them. From the library's perspective, we're going to be focusing on literature reviews as far as searching strategically goes, making sure that you can search efficiently to find the literature you need, because when you're doing a literature review, you have to be finding as much relevant research to your research question as you can, and you need to be able to organize that and then analyze and synthesize it into a cohesive result, into a cohesive conclusion, right? So while we can really focus in on how to find that literature, some of the writing aspects would probably be better directed at the writing center. And I definitely encourage you to reach out to them if you're in the writing portion, but hopefully this will help you if you're getting ready to find those articles to include in your literature review and to keep them organized. So I have this first slide up here with my contact information. I'm hoping that you're going to leave today with a couple of people's contact information. I'm also just going to put this in the chat. So that is my email address. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions later on. So I do want to start out with a quick poll so I have an idea of who it is that I'm talking to. The question is just, I want to know what department you're with or what subject you're studying, what area you're looking at. So you want to go to menti.com, and then this is the code to put in there. So let me put that in here, menti.com, and the code is 954. Oop, got ahead of myself there. All right, so we got some marine science. Couple of marine science and biomedical, biochemistry. All right, so we're heavy in the sciences today. That's good for me to know. Right. And if you're just joining us, the code is up here at the top. All right, so this is good because I happen to be a science reference librarian. The things that we're going to be talking about today are also going to be relevant to history and intermedia. It's just that I'm more likely to talk a little bit about use science topics as my examples because they're what I'm comfortable with. But everything that we talk about today is going to be applicable to every subject. Now, for those of you who don't know, all of the librarians at Fogler Library specialize in a specific subject. So I am the librarian for chemistry and physics and food science, biomedical science, and communication science and disorders. There is also a librarian for history and a librarian for electrical and computer engineering, a librarian for plant science. So what I want to do to start is give you information on how to contact your particular librarian. So I'm going to take us over to my Launchpad. And I know a lot of you are off campus. So where you're off campus, the best way to access the Fogler Library website is through your Launchpad. And the reason for that is that there's so many resources on Fogler's website that you have access to because you are UMaine students specifically. If the website doesn't recognize that you're a UMaine student, there are some things that you might have trouble accessing. So if you access the library website through your UMaine portal, you're already logged in. It recognizes that you're a UMaine student. You might have fewer connectivity issues. So Fogler Library website. Now, on our homepage, we have a couple of ways to contact us. You can always chat with a librarian. We're on there until 5 during the week. You can also email a librarian. That will go to our general email, and one of us will respond to you as we're available. But there's also this subject specialist button. And so, like I said, I am the librarian for chemistry. So we have an alphabetical list of departments. My contact information is here. If you were chemical or biomedical engineering, your librarian is going to be Heather. I saw history on there. Your librarian is going to be Mel. You can always ask any of us questions, but where you're grad students and working on literature reviews, you're more likely to get pretty in depth. And that's why we have subject specialists, because no one person is going to know all of your subjects as well as we need to in order to help you. So while you can reach out to me, you'd be best suited going to the subject specialist page and looking at the librarian who is specializing in your area. They'll be able to go a lot further with finding resources or helping you find resources. So definitely encourage you to use that subject specialist line. Okay, so as with all those subject specialists, one thing that we have done is created research guides. And these research guides are comprehensive lists of resources that are going to be specifically relevant to your subject area. If you've been on our website before, you know that we have this one search bar up here. It's really tempting to, if you're doing a literature review, just type in your main topic here and see what comes up. OneSearch is searching every single one of our databases and catalog to an extent. There are some databases that it doesn't search. Specifically, it has trouble with our psychology databases. So you are not getting everything when you search OneSearch, but you are getting a lot. So if you are a food science student and you are doing research on berries, and you search for, raspberries and health benefits here, you'll probably get some relevant articles, but you're also going to have a lot of articles from art databases and history databases, anthropology databases, even biochemistry and maybe some physics databases. That's just going to push down some of that more relevant information to you. And it becomes harder to parse through. So when you're doing a literature review at the graduate level, we don't encourage you to use OneSearch. What we want you to use are these research guides here. So I'm going to click in here. And again, I have an alphabetical list of subjects. So I'm going to pick communication sciences and disorders because it's kind of interdisciplinary. I don't want to go into something biomedical that isn't going to make sense to everyone. And I don't want to go into something like history where I'm not as familiar with the area. So I'm going to go into communication science and disorders, but you should be able to find any of your departments in this alphabetical list. I'd also just like to point out that there are some helpful resources over here, like citing your sources and using citation managers that you as grad students might find useful at this point. And there are a couple other sources I'll show you later on. But I'm going to go into this communication science and disorders page. There are a couple of pages that are relevant to communication science students, and there will be for all of these. But if you just go to the general guide, you'll get most of what you need. So each librarian does these a little bit differently, but for the most part, they're the same. We're going to find some relevant links here, including tutorials, which we're going to go into database searching today, but tutorials, maybe you want to look at a different perspective later on. Also ways to get full text. Some of you might find yourself using interlibrary loan, which is where we reach out to another library to ask for articles or books that we don't have access to here at Fogler. You can always reach out to me or to any of the librarians if you have questions about using that, but this site will also explain it. We also have this Ursus proxy bookmarklet. And I don't know how many people maybe have heard of this before, but at the graduate level, when you're doing a literature review, it's actually incredibly helpful. So I'm going to click on it and put the link into the chat. And apologies if you already have this, but we had a few people in our earlier session who didn't. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that there's somebody in here who doesn't. So let me put that site into the chat. So what the Ursus proxy bookmarklet does, you can see it in my bookmarks bar here. In order to install it, there's instructions for all of the different browsers. I'm just using Google Chrome. So all I have to do to install this on my computer is I take this link, I click, drag and drop into my bookmarks bar. All right, and that's how I got this on here. Your bookmarks bar does need to be visible. So if you're using a Mac or a PC, you should have 3 dots or 3 lines up in this right corner. If I click on it, I go to bookmarks, I'm gonna go to show bookmarks bar. So if you don't already have your bookmarks bar visible, do that so that you can see it, and then just drag and drop. So if I am on a page with an article, and this might have happened to you, that says, you have to pay $39.95 in order to access this article. We don't want you paying for that. You're already paying for tuition. You shouldn't be paying for individual articles. If you click on the Ursus Libraries Proxy Bookmarklet, what it does is it reloads the page that you're already on with your UMaine credentials. And if that article is in our collection, it will remove that paywall, because sometimes it's just that you've been researching for a really long time and you've gotten logged out, so the website isn't recognizing that you're a UMaine student. This way you don't have to go back to the beginning and start over. You can just click on that Ursus Libraries Proxy Bookmarklet. It is hard to demonstrate because I have to come across an article that we have access to, but I've gotten logged out at just the right time. But I will show you. I'm just going to go on Google Scholar really quick. And I'm going to search cochlear implants. And we're just going to go to an article page. And I can see that I do have access to this. I can click the PDF button and get it now. If instead of this PDF button, I was getting a pay $39.95 or a paywall, I would click on this bookmark and it would reload the page with my UMaine credentials and hopefully get rid of that. Like I said, it's hard to demonstrate because the stars have to align. But at the graduate level, where many of you are not necessarily on campus, and therefore it's more important that the server recognizes you as a UMaine student, the Ursus Libraries Proxy Bookmarklet will save you a lot of time. So I really do encourage you to install that, and please let me know if you have any difficulties doing so. Okay. So, and I am showing that to you first, just in case I get an opportunity to use it today. So most of these guides are going to have background information, examples on how to find books and theses, maybe some handbooks, and they'll also have recommended databases. So I have mine right on my homepage. I'm going to go to a couple different databases that have similar interfaces across different disciplines. So the first one that I'm going to jump into is going to be CINAHL. CINAHL is a nursing database, but it's often used by the communication science and disorders students because it's medically related and some of their topics are medically related. You'll notice that this list of databases is pretty interdisciplinary. I have some education databases in case they're doing research on students, linguistics and language. I have some psychology databases because that sometimes comes into play, and also some medical databases. Some of you might have seen our alphabetical list of databases. It's pretty overwhelming. There are 300 some databases on there, and they're all in alphabetical order. which isn't always helpful because just because I'm in the communication science and disorders subject does not mean that all of my relevant databases are going to start with a C, as you can see from this list. So by creating the research guides, we've tried to make this a little bit more palatable for you and easier to navigate. So definitely check out the research guide for your subject area if you haven't already. We'll also have the contact information for the librarian who is the subject specialist for this area. So you can see I have my contact info right here. All right, now I really am going to go into CINAHL. So this is a nursing database. You're doing a literature review. You are inevitably going to search multiple databases. In fact, if you go onto your research guide, I encourage you to probably search most of them, but also talk to your librarian. They might have specific examples. They might have additional databases for you to look at or suggestions of databases that you can just avoid at the topic that you're looking at. So this particular interface, this is an EBSCO database. That means that it is run by a company called EBSCO. Several of our databases are run by the company EBSCO. So you might come across this interface fairly frequently as you're doing research. All of your disciplines will. So I am going to, now at most levels, we don't necessarily tell or encourage students to create accounts, but where you are doing literature reviews, many of these databases will let you create an individual account. This is free. You do have to give them some of your information, so whatever your comfort level is with that. And what that allows me to do is to save my searches. Theoretically, I could do a search right now in EBSCO and click save my search, but it will only remain in there for as long as my session lasts. So that might be 24 hours. So if I were to come back in 24 hours later and look for my saved search, it's no longer going to be there. But if I sign in, you'd have to create an account if you haven't already. I have, and we use UMain account, so I can just continue with Google. Recognizes me. So I'm going to go ahead and now I am logged in. I can access this folder with previous saved searches. When you're doing a literature review, you often end up doing multiple searches across multiple databases. Having them saved somewhere will help you keep track of what searches you've already done, and also help you find those articles again more easily. So I do encourage you to create accounts on the databases that you're going to be using the most frequently. And now I'm going to go through how to actually do some of these searches. So I have cochlear implants as an example. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to search that to start. Now, I encourage you to always start broad and then narrow things down a little bit. So this cochlear implant might be the broadest point of my research. I got 11,587 results. Even with a literature review, that is far too many. So what I can do is the database gives me these extra search bars, and I can put additional keywords in here to make it more specific to my actual research question. So maybe I'm doing cochlear implants specifically in teens or so into teenagers. So I can go ahead and now what this here tells the database is that these are two separate terms, but I only want articles to appear if both of these terms are in there somewhere. So I do this search, and now I only got 30 results, and that doesn't quite sound right to me. 30 results, that's great. You'd want to go through and take a look at this first page of results, get an idea of what's there. But I think that I can probably get more if I use the word or. So the word or communicates to the database that I will take either of these words interchangeably. So I might do or teens or adolescents, oops, or young adults. So I'm basically writing out synonyms. I've capitalized this. It's not necessary to do that. I did the capitalization to make it stand out easily. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that search. And I just got so many more articles. Just because each of these authors probably used a different term for teenager, even though they all basically mean the same thing. Now I have and here to say that I want cochlear implant to appear with any of these words. I can click on this and I can choose or not as well. So I just used or here. You can see it's kind of best for synonyms. Had I put or in this box, what I'd be telling the database is that I will take any articles that mention cochlear implants or any articles that mention teenagers or synonyms. So that means I might have some articles about teenagers that have nothing to do with cochlear implants and vice versa. So this really should be reserved for synonyms in most cases. I want to keep it as and. You might also find yourself needing to use not. Not is me telling the database that I want all of my articles to include this word, but none of them to include any of these words. So if I wanted to do cochlear implants specifically in young children, maybe I would say, but I want none of my articles to include teenagers. This is a mistake that is pretty common in early researchers because the problem with doing that is that there might be an article that is really in depth and really useful that talks about cochlear implants in children, but mentions teenagers, maybe even just once mentions the word teenager or adolescent, and it will exclude that article. So you want to be really careful with the word not, and only use it sparingly. And if you do use it, make sure that you're also doing some searching without it, just so you know what you're losing. So I'm leaving this as and. So those are the three big words that you use the databases to communicate with, and or not. The other thing that we can use to communicate with the database is an asterisk. The asterisk is going to tell the database that I will take any word ending with the word implant. So that means I'm getting cochlear implants, plural, as well as cochlear implant, singular. Maybe it might be implanting or implanter. I mean, that's uncommon with this particular word, but you get the idea. If you wanted to get nutrients, nutrition, and nutritionist, then I would put in like NUTR with an asterisk. So that way I'm getting every possible word ending with that. So that can be really useful. And I have 823 articles right now. If I do the search with the asterisk, I have 838. So it got me a couple more articles, but you never know if those are going to be the articles that you needed. The other thing that I can use is quotation marks. So the quotation marks are going to tell the database that cochlear and implant have to appear together. We can't just have implant floating around somewhere in the article. I might also do this with young adults because if it lets this term float, then I just have adults in my article, and I'm specifically looking at young adults. I don't want to exclude the word adults, but I do want it to be specifically present with young in front of it. So I'm going to do another search there. And that weeded out a whole bunch of articles that the database had pulled out down to 241. And that's good, right? Because those articles that did let just the word implant float around somewhere or just let the word adults float around somewhere were not actually going to be relevant to me. And with you all, you probably have some pretty specific questions. You might end up using quite a few of these bars. Maybe I put in quality of life or well-being, and we'll put some quotation marks around that as well. And now, so I had very few articles to begin with, but when I was only using 2 search terms. Now I've gotten this whittled down to only 27, but hopefully it is particularly relevant to my research question. And now this is a good point for me to also point out that the librarians here are subject specialists in certain areas, but we are not experts in those areas. I am the chemistry librarian. I am not a chemist. So when we do sit down and meet with you, and as students doing lit reviews, it's very common for us to do that. We rely on you for the content information, and you rely on us for navigating the database, working out this puzzle that we just went through to find this list of relevant articles. But not necessarily going to be an expert in cochlear implants. So just like to put that caveat out there. If I really liked this search, I could hit share and I would add search to folder. So what that does is now if the next time I sign into my EBSCO account, I can go to my folder and I have this saved search right here. I could try to recreate it, or it gives me this permanent link. I can copy that and paste it in. Oh, okay, that didn't work. Well, it's good that we're recording this. Let's see. Lost track of that. Excuse me, sorry guys. All right, here we are. I was hoping it would give me the full search. There we go. Lead items, interesting. Okay, we have a lot of databases. They all do this a little bit differently. It looks like what I'd have to do is hit copy, go back to CINAHL. And what I could do is at this point, they formatted it for me well enough that I should be able to just copy and paste it in here and get the search back. Yeah, 27 results. So we use those different search bars because it helps us organize our thoughts. But when I put it into the folder, it had everything already in a line for me in such a way that the database can still recognize it. So you don't want to do this when you're writing out your searches unless you're really comfortable with where the parentheses go. But when you're going back into your folder, that's the best way to do it. So I'm going to encourage you. So I have a question on here. Will these specialized databases turn up more results than a search on Google Scholar? Not necessarily. So the results that you're seeing on Google Scholar, it's more like a Venn diagram. I can't say which will have more. It's like there will be some overlap. There will be some articles that are going to be in the specialized databases that are not in Google Scholar. And then there's going to be some that are in both. Google Scholar is going to have the same problem that OneSearch has, where it's turning up just so much information that it's pushing down those relevant articles. So you end up having to go through more pages of results than you would here, where I was able to get down to 27 articles that I actually need, rather than 2 million articles that have 27 that I need, but they're buried across 106 different pages, if that makes sense. Great. So, and I do encourage you to use Google Scholar. Most people kind of have an idea of how to use Google Scholar, which is why we're spending more time learning how to use these databases that aren't quite as intuitive. And again, you have the features to save things. You can also, there's a little persistent link here that you can use to copy and paste. I do really need to emphasize that if you copy and paste this URL at the top here, it will not last. They change these frequently. So if you do want to get back to this page, do what I just did, save it to your folder, and then you can copy and paste the link in the search in here. Or if you go to that share button, there is a persistent link. You can copy and paste this, and this will not expire. You can continue to use this persistent link. But this one up at the top here will not last. That is also true for the individual articles. If you come across one that you want to read, you want to click on it, and you want to either download the PDF full text right away, or there's a little button here for permalink. And again, that's a persistent link that will continue to work. This will not. It is very important when you're writing a literature review that the articles that you find you're able to get back to later. Some of you might have professors who use a citation manager like Zotero, or EndNote or Mendeley. The best thing to do is to use whichever citation manager your professor is using, so that way you can be consistent. But we do have a citation management workshop coming up at the beginning November 7th. And you will get an email about that one, just like you got an email about this one. But if you have questions about organizing things into a citation manager, I encourage you to go to that. And we have a question if you want to go ahead and ask that.
Yeah, when you take something and create the permalink, am I understanding correctly that permalink then goes to the folder that you were talking about?
This permalink here will take you back to this page. The persistent link that I showed you on the result list, so right here, that will take you back to this full results list. If you're worried about losing either of those links, then you can share it. You can just save it right to your folder.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for asking. So yeah, a couple of ways to hang on to those. I also just want to point out that there is this cited references button with your results. This is going to give you the bibliography of that article. One strategy that you might find yourself using with a lit review is looking through the bibliography of the articles you found to check for other articles that might be relevant. Or if as you're reading the article, you come across one that continues to come up, then you might want to be able to find it. So there is a cited reference list that is linked here, and I can scroll through and click on these articles. Some of these have PDF full text buttons that tell me I can get full access to them. Some of them say check 360 link for full text. That means that it's possible that it exists somewhere in another database, but not necessarily in this one. So I like to describe databases as being a little bit like streaming services. Like just because you have Amazon Prime doesn't necessarily mean you have access to every movie in Amazon Prime. Maybe you have to pay for a premium subscription. So EBSCO or CINAHL has this peer relationships of children with cochlear implants articles, but that doesn't necessarily mean our subscription covers it. So I'm going to click on this. Oh, and it says find this article in full text from JSTOR, which is another one of our databases. So always you just want to be looking for the next full text button. We have so many different vendors and resources that are trying to communicate with one another to give you articles that sometimes it's not as straightforward as we'd like it to be. But it has linked me to a different site where I can download it. If it hadn't, I might have tried that Ursus Libraries proxy bookmarklet, and from there I might have tried interlibrary loan if I couldn't get there if I still couldn't get that article. Okay, so this is EBSCO. What I'd like to do now is I'm going to leave this open, but I'm going to go back to that research guide, which I have lost in my tabs. And I want to show you, we're not going to go through as in-depth as we just did with CINAHL, but I do want to show you other ways to save searches in different databases. So the other common type of database that we have is called a ProQuest database. Both of these are ProQuest databases. I'm going to go there, and this is the interface that you'll find. This is our second most common type of database. So you might find yourself looking at this as well. I can click on advanced search to get just kind of exiting out of these cookies, to get the same, a very similar interface to what we had with the EBSCO database, right? I can click and I can put in my different search terms. They use the exact same words. They understand the asterisk, they understand the quotation marks, and that is true for all of our databases. They're all going to understand these 5 things, and or not, quotation marks and asterisk. So I'm just typing this in so we can use it as an example. Notice that I can also specify peer review, and I can also specify publication date if I don't want my articles to be any older than 10 years. And I can hit search. And again, a pretty similar interface. I can see the full text options in my list. And what I also have, just like in EBSCO, is an option to create an account. That's what this little person is here. So I can sign into mine. It's always interesting to see if we can successfully sign in when being recorded. There we go. All right, first try, excellent. So now just like so this has brought me directly to my folder now. You can see that this is a different saved search that I had in the past. And with ProQuest, I actually can click on this and see my full result list again. I'm going to show you how to do that though. Go back to my search. So now that I'm logged into my account, it really wants me to manage my cookies. I can click Save Search here. And I click Save Search, and it will go, I can name it. So I'll do ear implants. Maybe I'll put in October 2023. I can add notes if I want to. Hit Save. And now it's in my Saved Searches, which is up here in my folder. Let's see. Is up here in my little, under my little person here. So Saved Searches. And okay. So now I can go back and I can see that search again on cochlear implants. I can click on it. It tells me what date I did it on, which is October 16th. And now I can see that search result list again. So again, encourage you to do something along this lines. You can also create alerts here. And if there are new articles that are added to this list, you would get an email notification. So maybe another article is published in December of 2023. You would get an email notification. You can set how frequently you want to get those, and it'll let you know if articles that would now fit this search have been published and get added to this. Okay, so yeah, I'm not gonna go back through and do the same search that we did with EBSCO, but I did want to show you how that saved search looks on ProQuest. Now, at this point, we talked a little bit about how it's good to look through bibliographies because you can see the articles that this article cited might be relevant to your research. And that's also true of the articles that have cited this research since then. So many of you are science students. I'm going to go directly back to Fogler Library's website. And I want to introduce you to a database called Web of Science. I'm going to go right through to the database list. I know what I'm looking for. I'm looking specifically for Web of Science. Okay, there it is. So Web of Science is particularly good at tracking citations. So any searches that I do here, And again, it's the same interface that we had in EBSCO and ProQuest. I have the same and or not, so I can keep on adding. I can keep on adding words. I'm just going to keep it simple for now because what I really want to show you is that I get a list with every single one of my results of the articles that are in its reference list and also the articles that have cited this one since it was published. So if you want to find, maybe you find a really interesting article, but it was published in, 10 years ago, and it's not quite as relevant as it might have once been. You might take a look at the articles that have cited it since, because they'll be more relevant and probably on a similar topic. Hoping that makes sense. So I can click on this and get a list of the articles that have cited the one that I was just looking at. And on Web of Science, I would click free full text from publisher to get that full article. And again, you can sign in to Web of Science and do your own and start saving your searches. It's called a marked list in Web of Science. Yep, go ahead.
Is this unique to this particular database?
Yes.
That's okay. So we may or may not find this elsewhere.
Yes, this particular part where it actually will link to a list of articles that have cited the one you're looking at is unique to Web of Science. Most of them will have a list of like the references, like EBSCO had a list of cited references, but not the articles that have actually cited it. The other one, the search engine that will also do this is Google Scholar. Actually, so if I do Google Scholar and I do cochlear implants, I can see that was cited by 933 people. And I could click on this list and Google Scholar would show me those 933 articles. I will keep in mind that you might find the same article in Web of Science and in Google Scholar, and they will have a different number as far as how many articles have cited that one. The reason for that is that Web of Science is only going to be able to list other articles that are contained in Web of Science. Google Scholar, we actually don't know where they get their numbers from. They're a little tight-lipped about it. And you'll sometimes find that there's repetition. They might have the same article listed 3 or 4 times because it doesn't quite recognize them as separate articles. So often the numbers will be higher in Google Scholar. The last thing that I want to show you regarding citations is if you are, and I'm going to do this quickly because it's only going to be relevant to a few of you, there is a database called SciFinder, which is particularly useful for chemistry and physics students and engineering students. If you do a search in SciFinder and you come across an article you want to read, they have something called a citation map. If you click on that, it will show you this is your article. This is all the articles they cited. And this is all the articles that have since cited this one. So it kind of gives you a visual. And you can click on these and take a look at those articles. Again, just like Web of Science, gives you a visual of how many people have actually used this article. And you can actually even continue to expand it. So that's just a tool that I like to point out that's in SciFinder. Again, only really going to be relevant to the chemistry, physics, and engineering students. And if you have problems using SciFinder, reach out to me directly because this is the database, one of the databases that I take care of. Okay. So, if you come across an article that you went ahead, you got its full text, you've read the article, and you come across something in its reference list that you do want to access, but you don't have a link to it. I do want to show you how you can find it on our website. So maybe it's also true if maybe you're in Google Scholar. and you come across an article that you can't quite reach, we have a feature on our website called eJournal Search. So this is, you have a citation in front of you and you're trying to find the article that's the full text article. So you can go to eJournal Search and you want to search the journal that this article was published in. So let's go ahead. You can see that there are some that I've searched recently. I'm going to do American Annals of the Deaf. So we were just looking at cochlear implants, which is why I'm going to do this one. So this is a journal that publishes articles. I search it in my eJournal search, and if we have it in the collection, and we do have this one, it's going to give me a list of databases that contain this particular publication. And you can see that from 1886 until 2 years ago, we have the American Annals of the Deaf in JSTOR. From 1980 to present, we have it in Project Muse. From 1996 to present, we have an education full text. So you can see that sometimes our subscriptions are going to be different in different databases. So if you had come across an article in a reference list or on Google Scholar that was originally published in the American Annals of the Deaf, you can search it in eJournal Search and see which databases it's in. If the article that I'm looking for was published in 2023, it just matters that I don't go to JSTOR because this one's we only have it from 2 years ago in that particular database. So I'm just going to go back to CINAHL. And what I would do from here is I can search within this publication. So I could search the title of the article from the citation, or I could go by year and then by volume and issue, and just kind of browse through that to take a look and see if I can find my particular article. I hope that makes sense, but eJournal searching can be useful if you're trying to trace something that you found in a reference list. All right. So at this point, I'm just going to share a couple of relevant links to you, and I will put these in the chats. I'm hopeful that anybody watching the recording will be able to pause here and maybe write these down. This is a lit review matrix. So I'm putting this in the chat. A lit review matrix, it kind of explains what it is in here, but it's basically a Excel spreadsheet or a Word document, whatever you're most comfortable with, where you could physically write out the searches that you're doing to try to keep track of yourself. Because if you're doing a lit review over the course of 2 years, maybe a couple months down the road, you can't remember exactly which searches that you were doing in CINAHL that day. But if you have a lit review matrix, you can look back at it and see, okay, on October 16th, I searched in CINAHL for cochlear implants. And this is how many results I got. And this is the search I did. That way you don't find yourself redoing searches, and you can easily get to them again. So I'm just going to open this one, this is a good example. And you download this and you can make changes to it to whatever is relevant to you. What I would do is I would write down my database name. I would write down the search that I did, so cochlear implants and teenagers and quality of life. Now maybe I specifically was looking at teenagers, so I put that down. This has a lot more options than maybe you would need. You might put in a year, but essentially it is a way of keeping track of the searches that you're doing. And we do encourage people to do this, especially if you're going to be working on something for a long time. And kind of specializing it to you, right? Like maybe you don't need to have a sample type because you're doing history, but you might want to have a year that you're looking at. So you definitely would want to personalize this to yourself, but keeping track of the database and the keyword word searches that you're doing can be really helpful as you're going through your searches. Okay. And that's something that we can also help you with. Now, this is a lit review challenge that one of our librarians has put on in the past. And it has a lot of really good information about creating lit reviews. You might want to go through and try to do the challenge. It's no longer active, so nobody is looking to see if you participated or not, and all the activities are locked, but you could do them on your own time. And the idea is for it to help you make the most of your literature searching, and managing your citations, organizing what you find. That's what you'll find more talk about lit review matrices. But overall, a good set of resources for lit reviews. And finally, this one here is also for undergraduates, but it's for graduate students as well. And it has on day 5 of, again, it's a challenge that's no longer active, has some really good information on making sure that you're synthesizing your information when you're writing your lit reviews rather than summarizing. You're not just listing out what you found. You're also kind of comparing and finding themes within the literature that you've gone through all this trouble of finding to create unique conclusions. So this is another really good place to get additional information because you can only cover so much in 1 hour. Okay. So other than that, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording so that we can use these last like 7 minutes if you have questions for me. But again, I just encourage people to look out for that citation management workshop if you're going to be doing a literature review. All right, and thank you to everybody who watched the recording, and we will stop that. Share.